Hey, what's happening, everybody? So I wanted to just kind of do a quick intro to this video because this video is going to be a video of pictures. And the reason why is because when I originally did this project, I had no intent on doing a YouTube video. And as a matter of fact, I don't even have a YouTube channel now, but I will once this photo is posted, when the video is posted. So this is going to be a Columbian 403.5 Vise restoration. Another reason why I chose to start with this one is because I didn't find any 403.5 Vise video, photos, or really anything out there. Some things kind of in forums, but nothing really out there. So although this isn't going to be the best video, I wanted to at least put it out there on the map. So I hope you enjoy. Thank you. So this particular video is of a Columbian Vise that I'm pretty confident is from around the mid-1920s, I think 26, 27. And I was looking for a Vise because I began putting together a workbench so that I could do various projects that I was already working on. And I started paying attention to Facebook marketing, came across this one. So this is a Columbian 403.5 that as I was going through all the different YouTube videos out there, I didn't see this one in particular. So even though this is going to be just a lot of photos, I still thought it was kind of important to put it out there on the map. So if you look there kind of towards the top, you see a bolt going in. I think that's the only non-original part on this vise. However, it still was a pretty good vise, even though you can see some of the bending in some of the arms as we go through. So this photo here is me starting to disassemble the vise and taking it apart. You can see again the 603.5. This little sleeve screw was a pain. I ended up having to drill this hole out. Unfortunately, I tried and tried using all types of anti-seize and I just couldn't get it out. So I ended up having to drill it out, unfortunately. This is just another view of some of the arm, a better view of the entire arm here. And just so you know, this is my very first vise I've owned, very first restoration I've ever done. So chances of me screwing up the actual names and parts of these vices is 100%. So please bear with me. Again, here's the bottom part of the swivel, or the top part of the swivel, depending on is the bottom part of the main foundation here, not the actual swivel portion. Just showing of some of the rust I was working with initially taking it off. So these photos is now starting to show where I put it in some Home Depot bought soak overnight rust remover. The top part where it's still kind of rusted thoroughly is the part that was above the solvent line, and you can see where the steel is starting to come out where it was underneath the solvent line here. This is another view of what it looked like after removing it from the solvent, and some of the internal cleaning that was still required. I should have probably tried to do a little bit better job at cleaning it. I did try to clean it, just couldn't get in there very good, so I figured I'd dip it in the solvent before removing it. So you can even see here the sort of swivel lock is still in there at this point, which I ended up removing in a little bit later. So these are just some of the parts of what it looked like after pulling it from the solvent. Still a lot of cleaning to do here. And this is a good photo of what it looked like after the solvent. And you can kind of see here some of the white. I believe that is primer. After looking at some of the other photos we'll see here in a moment, the white color was the primer that was used. And on top, I believe it was a safety blue. At least that's what I gathered from some of the research that I did look into. Number one, ID, the manufacturing time frame of this vise, in addition to trying to learn a little bit about this machinist vise. This color right here is where you can see some of the original blue on top of the primer. This is I wanted to kind of document this color here before I removed it, because in the end I ended up taking everything down to bare metal and then building it up, which you will see in this video. So now, after using some drill attachments, some wire brush drill attachments, I went ahead and started cleaning it up. Wife was killing me because I was actually using the inside house, so I was able to clean this up, but she wasn't happy that I was doing this inside the house. Again, this was for my workbench I had not completed. Once I get it all assembled, I will not be using at all any part of the inside of my house other than the garage. Some more photos here on how the Columbian was just really starting to clean up, starting to come out. And here, what was a little confusing, and maybe someone might know this, but well, number one, you can kind of see some of the damage that this thing has taken. If you look to the left, there's a number 1 stamped with Columbia 35. I'm not sure what the nomenclature is or why this was a number 1. I have no idea on why that was. But if you then look to the right of the jaw here, you can see this thing has definitely taken some beating. Again, mid-1920s. This is seen its work. Here it might be a little hard to say, but there's an M in there with patented, stamped in this part. Here's another 50-50 shot showing where it was in the solvent and where it was not. And also another good view of how bent this bar was when I received it. In the end, I ended up taking it to a place where we ended up doing a cold, doing corrective pulls with a pipe wrench to straighten it up. We ended up getting it pretty dang good, which you'll see at the end of the video here. And this is when I began seeing that on the top of this jaw here, the jaw plate, you can see that it's definitely separated from the jaw. The plate is separated from the jaw, but at the top you can't really see, or from the faceplate, there's definitely no screws on the faceplate, and you cannot see the pins that are actually holding this together here because it had been worked on so much. Here's a good view of showing some of a little bit further along in the cleaning process. And now I'm really starting to work out here, and this is where I'm going to show you kind of the challenges I was here. So this part had seen its abuse or use, or however you want to see it, and you cannot see the pins on this one, or at least it's very challenging to. Here's another view of where you just absolutely cannot see the pins going through this. It's very, very minor. Here is where I'm able to see it because I know where to look now, but it's very challenging to identify it, at least at this point in the restoration. However, when you look underneath in this video, in this picture, you can see the pins. So I started banging on those pins and was really struggling on trying to get it out. I was using heat and everything, and they're just giving me a lot of problems here. So I decided to stop trying to take out those pins and just go to a polishing attachment, where I was using a sanding polishing attachment on my angle grinder just to kind of clean up some of the heavy marks that were imprinted into it, but not necessarily trying to make it perfect. Again, it's a mid-1920s Vise. I kind of wanted to keep some of the, let's just say, character. However, I did want to clean it up, and that's why you're now able to start to see it starting to shine up quite a bit more. Then after cleaning it up, I finally decided to go through it again and give it another go, where I was able to remove the pins. And I was able to remove the pins on this piece too. You see here's a little side view of me trying to clean it up with the polishing attachment on my angle grinder there. This is going to be another sort of quick before and after video or picture of what I was doing in this particular part. Then here's the after. You can see it's definitely starting to shine up pretty good using that sanding polishing attachment without removing too much material. And this is after going through everything one go over with the angle attachment. This is kind of where I ended up, and I was pretty happy at this point. However, if you look at the center right piece there, you can see that the sort of T-plate on the jaw is still in there, and I was unable to get that out. And so I then picked up some more attachments here from my drill, started getting into the holes and really cleaning it up and getting to places that I was struggling cleaning by hand. Trying not to let this vise defeat me, I then went in and purchased some metal chisels and started really trying to pound out this T-plate, but I was unsuccessful. And you can see I ended up just starting to do a little bit more damage than I was actually making progress with. So after basically calling around, I decided I'm going to just stop there, put everything together, and then see if I could find anyone that had basically a blowtorch or something to help me really heat this thing up to separate that jaw piece. While I was doing this Columbian Vise restoration. I was still looking on Facebook Market, and I came across another one, which ended up being Apprentice number 3 from the mid-1880s. And I'm actually going to do another video on that. So this is just showing me kind of mid-span on the Columbia Vise. I actually started another one, which I'll do another video on after this. And just kind of getting back to, I was trying not to give up on this, removing the T-plate, but I just couldn't get there. So here is just showing, I guess, not in addition to some cat hair, what it would look like when I actually do get it off. And just sort of this was the extent on. I was going to polish it up, but I was going to leave in the major ones. However, I also then finally, through a friend of my father, a machine shop out in Cathedral City, was able to hook me up, not only apply a torch to remove the T-plate, as you can see here, but really started helping me fill in some of these gaps with some weld. So I just asked him if he could, and he did a great job at filling in these gaps on these various parts. However, I then took my angle grinder and smoothed it out. Again, not trying to have it absolutely perfect and look like it's straight out of the shop. Still wanted to leave a little bit of the character, but definitely wanted to take a look at some of the things that were potentially going to be issues or continue to worsen as I use this vise. Now, in this photo, it looked like when I took out the T-plate, it kind of looks like it's saying World War II here, which I thought that's what it was saying, but it turned out being just a little bit too much of my imagination, because when I put it back into the rust remover, it was completely gone. So not an actual inscription from a previous owner, just a coincidental happening from when I removed the T-plate. So I decided to use POR-15 to keep this possibly in the family for a long time. You know what? Since I got the other Apprentice Vise, I'm not sure if I'm going to sell this one or sell the other one or keep them both, but I definitely wanted to take the time and do it right. But speaking of taking the time to do it right, what you'll see is I ended up taping up while I did the metal prep and the correction. The metal prep was the second step. The first step is actually doing degreaser, followed by the metal step. And I kept it taped up during the whole process, including the paint. Lesson learned, don't do that. I'll show why a little bit later. So this photo here is of my first coat of the actual POR-15. That's why you can see it's pretty light. You can still see the metal kind of coming through it on these photos here. But it ended up turning out to be pretty good here. I then went through with the second coat. I didn't necessarily go heavy, but I only wanted to do 2 coats. It called for a minimum of 2 coats, and I kind of wanted to make sure it was only 2 coats, so I went a little heavy, or at least I made sure that there was no more gray coming through. I don't know if it's necessarily heavy or light, but I definitely wanted to make sure I was done after this. So after doing both sides as appropriate for each piece, this is the kind of gloss that I ended up with, and I thought it came out looking really good. And to be honest, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with this piece, and I wanted to restore it to the original color, so I went and got the safety blue. So here you can see I'm using the POR-15 top coat. Then once I did that, it came out looking pretty good. I was very happy with the blue. However, this is why you should not do POR-15 tape up before you do the degreasing and the metal prep, because then when you hose it off, it all kind of stays there, and then you have to end up cleaning it up. So what I ended up doing for the Apprentice Vise was, which was the correct way to do it, if you're going to use POR-15 on a metal vise, I highly recommend you do the metal prep, do the degreaser, do the metal prep, shine or repolish all the areas that you want to have shine, and then put the tape on. It worked a lot better. After going over it again with the angle grinder polishing attachment, you can see how much better it's starting to look compared to the foundation on what it looked like after I removed the tape. So I decided to go ahead and do that with everything. This is a picture of the foundation where I did some of it with the angle grinder and left a little bit there just to take a photo, so you can see the difference. And this photo is actually completely of the finished product here. At this point, I'm showing a picture with the foundation in my hand after everything's polished up. And one of the things that I realized that was going to be a little bit more challenging was trying to paint by hand the lettering. Not only am I not a good artist with a steady hand, The lettering themselves was pretty challenging. So although from a distance it looks pretty good, up close wasn't too happy with it. However, for some of the parts was not going to paint over. I kind of wanted to keep some of the original metal showing. So I decided to use gun oil to cover those areas as sort of a rust prevention or rust preventative measure. And then where I was required to use some lubricant, I decided to go with this super lube I bought from Amazon. And so far it's working out good. So definitely make sure I put in quite a bit of lube and started to assemble the vise here. So I'm unsure on what, again, this #1 stamp with the Columbian 35 means. I don't know what this means. Maybe someone out there knows, but definitely doesn't match the 603.5 that we had seen in other places. So after putting in the sort of piece here, I added the pin from the bottom. This photo just kind of shows where, after the pin is inserted, how it holds in that screw part. Again, I don't know the name of it. Applying some more lubrication to some of the parts that are going to come in contact. Here's just another photo as I'm now starting to actually begin assembly of the vise. And you can see this is sort of a mid-span. With the workbench I'm actually using here is my unfinished workbench that I was hand planing at the time, getting very close to finishing leveling it with the number 8 Stanley plane that I ended up picking up and restoring myself. Here's a good photo of where you can see the swivel bar is now straightened. So that came out looking pretty good. And this is one photo of the little washer piece here. On one side it's brass, the other side was metal. Where it was brass, I decided not to paint that. But where it was metal, I went ahead and painted it. Since it was so challenging to remove this sort of pin from the sleeve, I decided to use Loctite, not only here, but on some of the other pins that I'll show a little bit later. But the pin that I picked up, the little hex screw here, was a little too big. However, I did do an operational test of it, and it spins just fine without seizing up or catching any other part. Here's where I decided to use Loctite. So these were the pins that I removed, and you can see they're definitely pretty beat up, and so using Loctite was going to be an absolute must here. So this is the final look on what the vise fully assembled looked like. Again, you can see the pin at the top there. That was the only part that I'm pretty sure was not part of this vise. It just doesn't seem to fit in there like I think it was, but it holds it in there good, and that's what I'm using. And I decided to paint the far end of the, again, main jaw assembly here, but left the top parts, left all the parts that possibly would interact with the metal bare. So if it was metal on metal, I tried to keep those bare metal, but any part otherwise that was sort of static, I chose to paint. And this is a final look of what it looked like before and what it looks like now. Thank you.